Welcome back, and let us now move to our first panel to discuss what should be the components of a Greek next-gen innovation ecosystem 5.0 in the context of the industry and the society 5.0. First, to familiarize ourselves with some of the housekeeping rules and the features of the platform. On your left top, there is a raise hand feature. You can also send your questions to the Q&A section. If you wish, you can get invited on stage and make your questions. Please introduce yourself at the beginning. At the bottom of your screen, you can use the emoticons feature, and also be mindful the event is recorded and will be uploaded on Greek Science Society YouTube channel. The event is also streamed on Facebook and YouTube, so please send us your questions to pass them to the speakers. So, we welcome the speakers of this session, which are Mrs. Eva Kaili, who was elected member of the European Parliament in July 2014 with the Pan-Hellenic Socialistic Movement, Olive Tree, and also head of the Hellenic Socialist and Democrats delegation. She's head of the Greek SD delegation, Pasokalia, in the European Parliament, and also chair of the Delegation for Relations with the NATO Parliamentary Assembly and the European Parliament Science and Technology Options Assessment Body. Next, we have Professor Chris Dellarocas, is the Associate Provost for Digital Learning and Innovation at BU, and the Shipley Professor in Management at the Questrom School of Business. He holds a diploma in electrical engineering and a PhD in computer science from the MIT. Next is Professor Costas Meghir, who is Douglas A. Warner III Professor of Economics at the Department of Economics, Yale University, and Visiting Professor of Economics at University College London. He is also Deputy Research Director at the ESRC Research Center Institute for Fiscal Studies. And we would also like to welcome back Professor Elias Carayannis. The moderator of this session is Professor Vassilios Makios, who is Professor Emeritus at University of Patras and at the Department of Electronics of Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada. Today is the General Director of Corallium. I'm now handing over to you, Professor Makios, to start the session.
Well, good morning, everybody. Firstly, I would like to, on behalf of the panel, to thank Theo Zacharis for creating those magnificent symposia, which will help, I would say, both of our countries, Cyprus and Greece, to blossom again. And since this, I would say, project is a project in 20 or 30 years odd, I think we should apply first and motivate and inspire young people because they will be the leaders at that time. So I always give them the idea of a vision. They should have a vision in life. And my vision is the famous Scuola di Atene of Raphael in the Vatican, where Plato took all the knowledge of the pre-Socratians, philosophy, science, mathematics, geometry, and engineering, and created the world of ideas. And he gave those ideas to Socrates to give it to the young people. And Aristotle, with his library, he gave the boys, I mean the young people, he gave the way to find results. So today we call that innovation and entrepreneurship. Also, I would like to say that we have to give them the joy of creation because curiosity, observation, knowledge in depth, and of course, collaboration through complementarity are the ingredients for something like that. And we have to enhance that in the Greek society. So we are ready to discuss with four fantastic people, impressive people, this project which we have in front of us, which is the Ecosystem 5.0, and how can we develop a Greek scientific paradigm. Miss Eva Kaili, as we said, the member of the European Union, is expert in science and technology. Professor Costas Meghir of Yale University is expert in economics. Professor Chris Dellarocas of Boston University is on digital learning and Professor Elias Carayannis of George Washington University is on innovation ecosystems. So we want to start with each one of you giving us a 5-minute expose of his ideas, and then we will follow the panel discussion. So I give the floor to Eva.
Thank you so much. First of all, allow me to thank you, Mr. Makios, Mr. Carayannis, Mr. Dellarocas, Mr. Meghir, and Theo Zacharis for hosting this event. I think it's really important seeing things from the European side. I understand how much Greece needs to have its scientific community to build up and support innovation also back home, also in Greece, and realizing also that this is the time that we have to act together since with the catalyst of the pandemic, we've seen that the digitalization is actually one way to survive, to become resilient, and also to become globally competitive. In Europe, we have a big market. We're trying to create a single market. Once it becomes a single and the digital single market, it will be one of the 2-3 largest in the world. And since our efforts today is to discuss how Greece could become a paradigm for the next generation of innovators for industry and society, I will try to highlight the process that we are now going through in Europe and see how we can succeed to have Greece participating as one of the leaders. So basically realizing that suddenly everything we were talking about, Mr. Makios was telling me that the things we are discussing now on science, they could seem even like science fiction for some, because currently everybody needs to make sure that they have a job, that they are secure, that they are safe from the pandemic. And talking about scientific development sometimes seems that it has a foresight, but it's not currently in need. The opposite seems actually that's happening, since we realized that in Europe we have 7.8 million of scientists on data analytics and cybersecurity, and by 2030 we need around 20 billion people working in these topics. So we understand there is a huge demand, there is a huge shift from the old jobs into the new jobs that require digital skills, and we are not ready to provide these digital skills. So Europe is trying to create a plan for the digital era, and trying to support the scientific community, not just in research and development, because in research, I would say we do quite well. We have a big increase of researchers, but we need also to keep our scientific results and efforts in Europe and be able to transfer this knowledge to the market. So some of the problems we faced is that in comparison to other markets like US and China, we don't have the same language, the same tax or legal systems. So we need to harmonize our environment. And this is actually happening now. We are trying to remove the final barriers as much as we can, actually. And we present a big digital strategy for the future. So we have the Data Act that is coming. We have the DSA and the DMA, so the gatekeepers, the big players of the internet, how they can open up and allow more innovation to happen. So they are holding strong on those data. They have to start sharing at the DMA and DSA. So also the services, this means how we can have user protection, especially protecting European values, and of course investments in supercomputers, in quantum computers, and now microchips. So next year it's going to be really very interesting global tech race to succeed, to have some capacity that can respond to the need of the market, since we saw that after the pandemic, the recovery, suddenly the demand cannot be fulfilled with the existing capacity that Europe and US has, of course, but also that the big part, 70%, is concentrated in Taiwan, and there are specific worries that Europe and US might be exposed. We have a big recovery plan. We have the 30 billion for Greece, 18 for grants, 18 billion, and and 12 billion for loans, that we need to pass through the prism of sustainability and also digitalization. This means we need to be very specific on how we're going to spend this money. We need to have skills. We need to reskill people to be able to take these new jobs. Once the jobs that need automation or that they are boring, they will start to be less and less needed, since robots can take over, or like software of automation and AI. We need to invest in stronger from the private sector. We are quite low, and at the Digital and Economy Society Index, we are I think second from the bottom. So we need to do more. And again, working on Artificial Intelligence Act recently, I think also Greece doesn't only need to have an approach, but we need to have a strategy, which means how we're going to use autonomous system automation to remove bureaucracy, to manage to improve services and improve our supply chains, and be able to create these new jobs of the future that I would say 3-4 years ago we haven't even thought of, like being an influencer, selling online, being on the marketplace from your house, and during the pandemic being able to have a salary is something that we haven't even considered before. So these are some of the topics that we are trying to remove the barriers and make sure this new economy will find us well equipped. But I prefer to have the discussion with you and not take more of the time. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Eva. Let's go to Costas, please. Costas, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much for the digital floor, I guess. Thanks for the previous comments. I think it's a good introduction to what I have to say. From my perspective, one of the key issues in Greece and in many other economies is human capital. And human capital, of course, is produced by education. So we really need to focus in Greece on the education system and ensure, in some sense, complete access to high quality education, because that's the only way we can support growth and innovation. In some sense, there's a huge complementarity between having a highly educated workforce and being able to adopt new technologies and exploit them to their limit. Education addresses two extremely important things of our era, except for growth. It addresses inequality. In other words, if we manage to provide equal access to high quality education, we're going to eliminate one of the key reasons for which we have inequality. And the other thing it offers is flexibility and adaptability. And we've moved from an era of kind of a relatively steady technological progress to one where we seem to have revolutionary technologies come in, every decade. So we need a workforce which is adaptable to this circumstance, and that's what's one of the key features that education offers. Now, one thing I'd like to stress is that education is something that starts extremely early. So we shouldn't conceive of education just as high quality high school or even high quality primary school, but we should think of early childhood education more or less from birth. And that's where the inequalities in society have their root, because children from low socioeconomic strata end up having much fewer opportunities and being much less stimulated and build up developmental deficits from very early on. And these get entrenched in long-run inequalities afterwards in society, to a huge cost both to the individuals themselves, but also the society, because effectively you've got an unskilled component of society which cannot respond to the modern requirements of technology and growth. So consequently, if we're going to talk about a high-quality education system in Greece, we have to talk about a holistic system of support of children that starts soon after birth and tries to offer equal opportunities right through the income distribution. That's a huge challenge. It will require both effort and resources, but the first thing it requires is for this to be understood as a fundamental element of education policy, something that unfortunately is slow to be accepted in Greece, although we have made some important steps recently with some initiatives we are putting in place for early education yes. Finally, I'd like to say that we need in society, balance is very important. So we need a balance between excellence on the one side and equal opportunity and inclusivity on the other. So we have to design an education system from 0 to 20s that is inclusive, that is non-discriminatory, and at the same time rewards excellence at every level. Without that, we are leaving talent behind, and we are promoting social inequalities. All this is not easy. It sounds easy and it sounds attractive, but it will require investments. It will require very strong investments, sometimes investments that politicians are not that interested in because they do not have an immediate return. The return might be in 20 years or so. So it's always hard to convince politicians to invest in something for which the return will be long into the future. We have the example of Lyndon Johnson in the US, who invested in Head Start, and we've already seen some important results, particularly at among the poor. But it does require vision and strength in order to be able to invest in the future, and that's where I hope we'll be going in Greece.
Thank you, Costas. But from my experience, I would say we should forget memorizing. We should learn the people to critical thinking, and we should ask them definitely to work together collaboratively in projects. This is not happening, unfortunately, and this we have to enhance. So I'm totally agree with you, but we have to find the ways to proliferate it out to society, you know. I mean, the teachers is the basic in that aspect. So let's go to Chrysanthos. You have the floor.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Costa. Thank you, Vassili, for setting the stage for what I would like to say as well. I also would like to focus on human capital, of course, and give you a little bit of a more detail and perspective on what this next-gen education could be like. We need, obviously, a population and labor force that has the right competencies and the right mindset to continuously innovate and to thrive in a world where change is happening faster and faster. So when it comes to competencies, we often distinguish between hard or technical competencies and soft or transferable competencies. Examples of hard competencies include engineering, computer programming, data science, medical expertise, etc. So when we talk about soft competencies, we talk about effective communication, ability to work in teams, creative thinking, adaptability, resilience. I prefer to use another way of describing these two sets that I think is better suited to the world of tomorrow. So hard competencies are perishable competencies, competencies that are most vulnerable to technology change and which become obsolete and need to be updated in order to remain competitive. Soft competencies that are anything but soft, they tend to be more durable. That is, they remain relevant across professions and across technological paradigms. I cannot emphasize enough how important the durable competencies are. Research increasingly shows that professional success and personal happiness correlate much stronger with the durable competencies than they do with the so-called hard competencies. Nevertheless, the development of durable competencies is often neglected by our formal education system and is left to a large extent to families to help nurture with all the inequalities that Costas just talked about. Durable competencies represent the most important gap between what industry needs and what most university graduates possess. When it comes to perishable or technical competencies, keeping them current and sharp requires a different approach to education than our current degree-based system. Some believe that the half-life of a set of technical skills today is as short as 5 years. In order to stay competitive, workers of tomorrow will have to be continuously assessing and renewing their skills. Adult education will become a part of our everyday life, like going to the gym or visiting our doctor every year for an annual checkup to maintain our physical health. Digital learning, enhanced by AI-powered digital life coaches, offers the technological infrastructure for such lifelong learning and reskilling. I'm envisioning digital platforms that act as our personal career and life advisors, that keep track of our education and current level of competencies, connect with dynamic, predictive models of supply and demand of skills in the labor market, and provide each of us with personalized real-time advice about what skills and competencies we need to be updating to stay competitive in our career, in our life. For example, such systems could predict that, say, an accountant's job is likely to be performed by machines 2 years from now, and advise that person on alternative careers and how to reskill so that he or she can be ready for the change when it happens. However, the most important prerequisite for all of the above to succeed is having a population with a proper mindset, a mindset of curiosity, self-motivation, and continuous growth, and an ease with semi-independent learning. Again, these are qualities that are not emphasized in today's primary and secondary education in Greece, and actually, for that matter, almost nowhere else. So, to truly have a chance at creating a next-generation innovation ecosystem, Greek society needs to rethink education at multiple levels. It needs to emphasize the right set of durable skills and growth mindset in the primary and secondary education. It needs to ensure that university programs further evolve durable skills and are agile in teaching the most up-to-date set of technical skills for the intended careers that each program prepares students for. Finally, and very importantly, it needs to embrace adult and professional education and reskilling as an integral part of one's life. Greece currently has one of the lowest participation rates in adult education within the EU. A lot of challenges, but I think that with proper planning and, as Costas said, investments, we can get there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chrysanthe. You know, we had that example in Patras where we brought a multinational company next to the university, and this, I would say, mingling between the company and the students of the university created this new idea of how do you use your knowledge to become practice. And I would suggest that in the Greek society, next to all the universities, multinationals can come and build small design centers where they will take advantage of the brain power we have in the universities, and they can teach them how to produce products. And this is really, this happened to Patras, and we have now multinationals next to the university, and they are thriving. They have around, I don't know, 800 people. So I think this is one of the examples which I advocate in the past 40 years. Difficult, but I would say it could come. So we come to Elias. Elias, take the floor.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Vassili. Thank you, Chrysanthe, and great to hear from Eva and Costas. And I would just like to also refer indirectly to my earlier comments in the second keynote today, synthesizing to some extent comments so far and hopefully building on them. And the idea, first of all, is that we are talking about the Hellenic innovation, research, and education ecosystem. And this, to me, obviously has both a physical and a cyber dimension. And so this is important to further develop and facilitate with many of the issues that were touched upon, and including more in the bigger context that I will talk to next. First of all, regarding the cyber-physical aspect, I think it's great indeed to have in proximity of universities, companies, and other entities that are leveraging knowledge to facilitate this better, more targeted, focused type of research that is also helping advance the state of the art and showcase the capacity of people in Hellenic universities for research. At the same time, one could actually develop schemes like what I was involved in a few years ago during the peak of the crisis, more than 10 years ago, in order to figure out ways to help decelerate the migration of highly educated and skilled people from Hellenic universities and Greece in general to places in Northern Europe and elsewhere. We started what we call the Innovation Odysseys initiative, which was actually helping connect researchers with the market, lab to market connections, in a way that we gave them training and development in a way for entrepreneurial launch, but also location of these companies, not necessarily in the proximity of the university, but in places like in the US. So basically, we have a co-location scheme that, due to the digitalization of things, is increasingly possible nowadays. That actually was very positively recognized and developed up to a point. I think whether it's the initiatives that you, Vassili, have been promoting for many years now, or things like the Innovation Odysseys, that needs to have a national level of recognition. In fact, at the European level, there are many mid-level universities that could further grow by becoming further integrated. And so this is one thing. The other is the challenges that are also opportunities confronting all of us. And this has to do with what the Biden administration recognized as the 3 C's of challenges, that is COVID, climate, and that country in Asia. I'm not talking about Cambodia, that actually represent significant challenges, and that can also be an opportunity. In essence, this is about emerging autocracies versus developed democracies, and how to safeguard democracy as well as the sustainability. I talked about true or smart or sustainable sustainability in the keynote. This is really about how to ensure that what we do actually helps advance both the posterity as well as the prosperity of our democracies. And that, I think, is also an opportunity in many ways for the cradle of democracy. And of course, this is something that we should keep building on. And lastly, this has to do with ensuring that initiatives that recognize the importance of balance, as Costas mentioned, and all of us in a way. This is the balance between technocentric and human-centric, to ensure that this prosperity actually, again, safeguards human rights, human identity, and individualism, as well as the integrity of society and social cohesion. And that, I think, is a real challenge for Greece, but also for Europe. We know that a few days ago, in fact, the European Parliament sued the European Commission for rule of law issues in Eastern Europe. That is a current and the latest challenge in that sense, that I think is very important to contextualize in how we can best serve our democracies and our economies. At the center of it all, and in closing, is universities and the role they can play. But in the end, education should be, as many other such initiatives, a public-private people-planet partnership. It should be something that involves both the public and the private sector in a transparent and effective way. We should avoid having public sector actors and champions speaking in their own language and space, separate and in contrast and in conflict often with private sector champions of educational initiative. And this is what national leadership needs to recognize and undertake in terms of a convergence of mindsets and behaviors. So I close here. Thank you.
Elias, I think you gave me the idea. I have a proposal which can handle that situation. Can we form an East Mediterranean innovation hub between Israel, Cyprus, and Greece, and join forces in this particular area and create, through the collaboration of different, I would say, mentalities, create those ideas which you were discussing. Because this is Greece alone, Cyprus alone cannot do. You know, Israel is thriving because he has this connection with the diaspora of the United States, you know, the Jewish society in the United States. Can we do that? I mean, this is a point which we can discuss later.
We could and we should. So, but let's go into the discussion.
Exactly. Okay. So let's go now to the discussion. I think I have 6 or 7 questions from each, 2 from each one of you. I will start with Eva, and I will give the 2 questions Eva sent us and ask Eva to comment. Can you give us some examples of what the European Parliament is doing to create this enabling framework for Society 5.0? What does this mean for Greece? And of course, can Europe lead in the digital race? What about Greece? What kind of investments do we need? You start with yours, and then we can extend it to the panel.
Yes, thank you. So there were excellent contributions in this discussion, and I would like just to highlight some things that I believe they are recent numbers that show us exactly where we have to focus on. So 2 weeks ago, the European Innovation Council, which is a new structure of Europe to invest in the second phase to keep the startups in Europe, so to make sure we will not lose talent, as you all mentioned, towards other markets. So we have 65 startup champions in 16 European countries that they will receive up to 17 million of funding to develop and scale their groundbreaking innovations in healthcare, digital, energy, biotech, even space and other topics. No SME out of the 65 comes from Greece. So I think we need to invest in our talent and we need to support more our ecosystem here. There is funding. I know it's sometimes complicated, but now there will be increased funding to support this ecosystem through digital innovation hubs, artificial intelligence centers of excellence, and big missions under the horizon for specific tasks like sustainable development and agriculture, smart agriculture, innovation, again, for SMEs. I think we need to decide the strategy of Greece. So we cannot decide to follow everything. We have to focus on the topics that they are essential for us. For example, tourism, services, renewable energy, the microchips race that I mentioned before. It will become extremely geopolitical, and to have investments from Greece in this topic would create excellent jobs. It will give us resilience, not only in the digital era, but basically of our strategic position in an unstable neighborhood in the Mediterranean. So we could use tech diplomacy to enhance Greece's position in several ways. And Europe will invest on artificial intelligence since the act will finish and complete, which means we will decide the high-risk applications that we will not, let's say, support a lot, that they could be harmful to people. We will ensure to avoid to have facial recognition or other biometrics in the public space. And of course, we will not accept social scoring from governments, but we definitely will use AI to complement everything we do until now. And then I said again, we will try to limit the gatekeepers and to make sure they will open up their data for new businesses, which means our government, for example, can open the public generated data to specific companies, to startup community or to the SMEs, and allow them to build their knowledge and to make sure that machine learning will use good quality of data sets to provide us with better examples and results. So I think since we are trying to unlock the power of data. Greece should decide what the strategy should be, not just a wishful thinking strategy or just the approach how we see things, but what are the sectors that we want to invest, and they are critical for Greece, taking under consideration our position, and also the traditional sectors of SMEs that need to become more digitalized and more innovation friendly. Because during the pandemic, what we saw is that the SMEs that they were digitalized, they were the most resilient. The rest, they had to transfer, they had to translate everything they had offline online, and this took time, and the funds were not there at that point. So we have to use this recovery fund to achieve it, and also to decide with which countries we can collaborate and share best practices, and build corridors of communication, and can transfer the knowledge from research to the market. And of course, you all mentioned the digital skills. It is a great opportunity to build up programs, not just for the universities, but at all levels, for our children to learn and have this global language of digital skills and of coding. Because even if you don't become a coder, the understanding of AI will help you to control it. It will help you to include it in your business models, whatever you do. And it's the first time that Europe, although we don't have the full responsibility for the educational strategy in Europe, this means that it's the first time that Europe is trying to support the member states to gain access to funds and to build up this strategy. Finally, to build trust, I think we have ENISA in Greece, which is the Cybersecurity Agency of Europe, and cybersecurity is essential for anything we discuss. Biotech, space, robots, AI systems, software systems. We need to invest also in cybersecurity skills, and we need to have the government lead the path, because the private sector is very hesitant in Greece to invest. And if you have a committed government and a long-term strategy, then you can ensure that they would also participate. So I think these are the initial points I would like to make. And I hope that Greece, since we actually managed to move ahead, we move forward, and we see that now we are more innovation friendly, that we will take a next step and we will build up a strong strategy to take advantage of what happens now in Europe, what takes place. So this digital strategy in several different sectors that hopefully will be concluded in a couple of years. Also cryptocurrencies, how you can use them to have online payments, uninterrupted supply chains, but also for the international payments. If you remove all these transaction costs, you can save so much money to invest in other sectors, that I think it's essential for Greece again to decide and lead in this financial services system that gives us huge opportunities ahead.
Anybody wants to say something on that?
Yeah, if I may, go ahead, Costa,
Sure.
you wanted to say?
Okay, just a very brief thing. Just to add to what Mrs. Kaili said, it's extremely important that in Greece we allow entrepreneurship to develop. We still live in a country where there's a lot of constraints in starting a business, in running a business, and in innovating. There are both institutional constraints in the sense that it's still quite bureaucratic and complicated, and there are also ideological constraints in the sense that there's kind of still this kind of idea that making a profit is kind of a signal of underhand operations rather than of success. And we don't celebrate success in Greece enough, and we don't encourage it through the institutional structures that exist. And that's one of the reasons why we do not have enough kind of high-tech investment in Greece. I've always been conceiving Greece as a bit as a California of Europe, right? It's got the climate, it's developing a liberal atmosphere to life, which makes it kind of easy for people to live there. All we need is to encourage entrepreneurship institutionally and ideologically, to get there.
I'm sensing that for the last 40 years who I'm here. So this for me is very well known. Anybody else?
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
So basically, I think to go back briefly to what I mentioned, the Innovation Odysseys initiative that we piloted. And I think this is something bridging lab to market bridges is very important to pursue across Europe for mid-range universities. And this is something I have been writing and talking about. Now, what that relates to our discussion about is that people, researchers, professors, doctoral students, and so forth that were involved in this process, and we helped train them to either enhance existing or create companies. We brought them to the US, to my university for a week, and we actually exposed them to investors and entrepreneurs. And whereas at first they thought that since they did well in the training program, they should automatically be funded, and they were asking about this. This is like this three as potatoes in a way. Then when they got there and they spoke with these investors and entrepreneurs, there was a mind shift, a gestalt switch, really. And that's really what we should be after. And exposing people directly and indirectly, whether it's companies located near universities or people, startups partnering from different parts of Europe, is one important thing, I think, to do mind engineering, so to speak, as Costas also mentioned. And of course, EVA and the initiatives of the European Union are very important in this sense. Now, in connection with this, one more thought. I mean, yes, Greece is, because of the location, potentially could be the California of Europe, and should be in my mind too. But then it also is in the middle of many conflicts. So how about undertaking an initiative? And this is something I tried years ago, also since Israel was mentioned, with friends and partners at the time there, to develop initiatives for digital entrepreneurship. And this is part of the digital innovation entrepreneurship ecosystem idea. Develop initiatives involving people from different parts of the fence, young people. So for instance, Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots in startup companies that would be focusing on digital technologies and actually would be supported by the European funds. And also in other contexts, we have places like Libya and so forth. The structural development funds are a very important enabler of more stability and preemptor of illegal migration and what have you. So Greece could be a very important agent and driver and leader in that sense, taking these initiatives. In Israel, we tried doing this between young Israelis and young Palestinians at the time. We even consider setting this up on floating incubators in international waters outside places like Lebanon and elsewhere to avoid territorial issues. This could be replicated in the case of Cyprus. I know this may sound far-fetched, but since Eva has been talking about real strategies and bold action, I agree with. We need to really look into opportunities where Greece could make the difference in many ways, since it has, I'm not saying superpower attributes, but potential for very great. It's an influencer as a country, culturally, intellectually, and of course the shipping sector as well. So that's it for now. Thank you.
I think that Coralia has done that in the last 15 years. We have created 3 major clusters in microelectronics, space, and gaming. We have created with Eurobank an accelerator, which is fantastic. And now we have a program of Prince Charles, Prince's Trust International, where we teach young people from the universities how to become entrepreneurs. But this is a long-range planning, and it's not easy. It's difficult. People have to realize in Greece that they have to give money for that. And money from Europe is also very bureaucratic. So I think that when you want to enhance a country, when you want to develop a country, you have to give freedom in the way the young people are progressing and they are not suppressed. I think, do we have more time, or is it finished?
Professor Makios, thank you very much for your comments. We need to wrap this up in about 5 minutes, and this is very sad because we're having a great discussion. I think we
you
will
are the regulators
for one more question Or perhaps, Professor Makios, we have a question from the floor. Should we answer the question from the audience?
Tell us what's the question of the floor.
So Professor Peter Grumpos is asking about international conflicts and the interests of big powers. And Professor Grumpos is asking essentially, how will these allow Greek scientists to lead this Industry 5.0, given that there is international conflict and the interests of big powers? Will this in any way thwart us from achieving Industry 5.0?
Who wants to answer that? I think Elias.
I don't want to monopolize. I'll say very quickly, I see this as an opportunity more than a challenge, and happy to further discuss to let space for others.
Yeah. Okay. Who else? Anybody?
Well, I can always add something to the geopolitical dimension I mentioned, that exactly because it's becoming very geopolitical, we are now in Europe at the position that we are realizing, and we are investing a lot into becoming more resilient in the future. And since we are as strong as our weakest link, this means it's a great opportunity for our countries that they have not been leading in this era to be able to take this possibility and invest in specific sectors of the future to become future-proof. And it's not only space; it's like space communications through satellites. It's quantum mechanics. Is, as I mentioned before, the microchips act that is coming, the Cyber Resilience Act, to have cyber defense for the whole European Union. So we have to decide where we want to invest, because the fund is there and it's quite generous, especially for our countries. We have to take this opportunity to create new jobs for our youth in order to stay at home, and they can, with teleworking now, it's possible to work from Greece for Europe and beyond, and make sure we will create a new ecosystem of excellence in our country. This requires a decision, and the funding is there now from Europe. I believe that when Merkel said in the beginning of the pandemic to whoever was criticizing and refusing Eurobonds, she said, we cannot survive this pandemic alone, not even Germany, because if you don't have a European market, even for Germany, is a huge shortcoming. And I believe now we are in a very geopolitical understanding of what this fourth industrial revolution means, and a great opportunity for Greece.
You think we have finished?
Vasily, can I echo something here, if I may? And I apologize for. I think really the integrated circuits. Taiwan is about 80% of global production capability. Europe is terribly low in this regard and is desperate to increase the capacity. And Taiwan, this is the Taiwan Silicon Shield, forcing the U.S. to intervene if anything happens with a neighbor. Now, so this is a great opportunity for Greece, but that takes real bold leadership to really commit co-investments of a real size in Greece, working with European funds, of course, and also the other thing, cybersecurity, since we do have a center, I think is also of critical importance, because this is a broad enabling and, multi-use and multi-context technology and set of technologies. I really think it's worth considering focusing on these two and developing and leveraging whatever capacity we have, which is not insignificant, both within Greece and along the diaspora. Thank you.
Should I say that I was grateful to have you all? I think a discussion like that should go forever, because those problems, I have been here for more than 45 years since I came back from Canada, and I'm trying to help the Greek young people to be productive. And I had big success in Coralia, the Egg, and all the others in the University of Patras. But this is, you need Socrates in order to, I would say, instigate the young people to go in this direction. So I think we need better education system and better teachers. We have to get involved. Professors of the universities, they have to get involved not only in their particular work, but they have to go outside of their department, of their laboratory, and see how they can inspire more and more people. And my preoccupation was inspiring young people. Unfortunately, I've sent 600 to the United States. I want them back, perhaps with a nomad, creation of these nomads, as they call it, nomades. This can change, the scene. But, the salaries here are very, very low. Who will stay here when he gets so big salaries abroad? So the economy is playing a big role too. Any last comments from anybody else? Costa, Chrysanthe?
Thanks, everybody. I think it's been a great discussion, always too short, but on the other hand, brevity sometimes has the advantage of focusing minds and not dragging on too much.
I thank you all. You made my day. Good luck to the young people. I tell them, be human, open your wings, and conquer the world of 5.0. This is my last.
Thank you very much, everyone. We are very humbled to have you. Thank you individually, Professor Makios, for your wonderful moderation in facilitating a fruitful and stimulating discussion in the interests of time. Professor Meghir, thank you for outlining the focus of education, and it should be from birth, outlining the socioeconomic determinants and that we need to incentivize into long-term investors. Ms. Kaili, for outlining the need to invest in our ecosystem and support digital innovation hubs and create artificial centers for excellence. Professor Carayannis, for enriching the discussion with topical examples and outlining the battle of emerging autocracies with developed democracies, connecting to sustainable sustainability. And last but certainly not least, Professor Dellarocas, for your talk on hard and soft competencies and how the former are becoming obsolete and the latter are anti-fragile, and we need to focus on reskilling to achieve this anti-fragility. Thank you, everyone, for this lovely discussion. We will move to a very short minute break before we proceed to our second panel of the day.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Welcome to the Greek Scientists Society Second Symposium. Discover the way a Greek scientific paradigm may develop an innovation ecosystem 5.0.
How should we connect to the next session? Do we have to go? It's a problem with this platforms.
«40 χρόνια βιοιατρική. Είμαστε εδώ για την υγεία όλων».
If we stay here, can we hear the next